Hello and welcome to the first of our two Creative Climate Tools user webinars. My name is Caroline Picasta. I am a project manager at Julie's Bicycle. My pronouns are she and her. I have long brown hair, which is currently tied up. I'm wearing glasses, a black t-shirt and pink cardigan, and there is a plant in the background behind me. Shortly, I will hand over to my colleague, Marina Ivano, and other JB people with us today. We've got Lucas Fraser, who is online to help us facilitate our Q&A session, and Luby is with us to help us technically. A little bit of housekeeping first. So to begin with, the session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website. We won't be enabling microphones. We've got an awful lot of attendees today, which is fantastic. But we have two ways for you to be asking questions later on in the session. On the screen now is a link and a QR code to Slido, which will give you access to Slido, where you can answer questions, ask questions. And we also have the Q&A function in Zoom enabled, so you can ask questions there too. Now, we are hoping that most of your questions about using the tools will be answered within the demonstration that's happening shortly, but please do use either of these functions at the end for anything you want answered. As we do have so many participants, it may be that we don't get to all of the questions within this session, but after the session, we will definitely address anything that we haven't managed to get to. After Marina's demonstration, we will be taking a short comfort break and then we'll return for the Q&A session. We're hoping to wrap things up by 2 p.m. We had said 3, but that's quite a long session for everybody. But we're actually going to play things a little by ear on timings, just depending on how many questions there are. Okay, so moving on to our agenda. We will begin with an introduction to the partnership between Julie's Bicycle and the Arts Council England environmental programme. We'll then touch briefly on what is coming up in the 23 to 26 programme. We'll look specifically at NPO reporting for the rollover year of 22-23. We'll provide a brief overview of the current updates and planned work on the Creative Climate Tools, formerly Creative Green Tools. I will then pass on to my colleague Marina, who's going to take you through the tools, whereby hopefully we'll answer most of your questions. Then we'll have the break, and finally we'll hold a Q&A session in which we aim to answer the rest of the questions. So, Julie's Bicycle, for those of you that don't know us already, we are a not-for-profit organisation with 16 years experience supporting the creative and cultural sector to take direct action on climate change and environmental sustainability. Working at this intersection of sustainability and arts and creative industries, JB offers free events, expert resources, carbon tracking tools, training and consultancy to equip organisations with the knowledge and confidence to speak out and together on this issue, and you can find out more on our website. So Julie's Bicycle works in partnership with the Arts Council England to deliver the environmental programme for national portfolio organisations and the wider cultural sector. So welcome back to any of you from the 2018 to 2022/23 portfolio, and hello to any new starters from the last year within this cohort. For those of you that don't know, this programme was actually extended by 1 year to accommodate the challenges we faced during COVID. We were meant to finish in 22, but this is our rollover and final year of 23. And welcome along to anyone joining us as part of the new 2023 to 2026 portfolio. While you may not be ready to report just yet, this webinar is going to provide you with lots of very useful information for when you do come to use tools. So the Arts Council England Environmental Programme is one of the larger projects we work on in partnership with ACE. This webinar is one of the specific outputs from that programme. JB has been partnered with ACE to deliver this programme since 2012, and we are incredibly happy to be continuing that partnership into the 2023-26 programme, helping funded organisations report on annual environmental impacts, supporting arts organisations to take action. The programme includes free resources, briefings, help desk support, events and webinars, all aimed at increasing environmental literacy within the sector. You can find more information in our latest annual report. This is the screenshot here on screen, with case studies from all types and sizes of organisations. This slide shows just a couple of the other recent publications that are also direct outputs of the last programme, including the energy briefing and finance briefing. These and lots of other free resources are all available from our website. You can download them from either juliesbicycle.com or the Arts Council website. And you can also, please do sign up to our newsletter. The link is on the slide, but we can pop it into the chat later as well if you could. So why use the tools? What is the value of reporting? Well, the power of collective reporting is very strong. Here are just a few stats from last year's annual report. 92% of MPOs include environmental sustainability within their core business strategies now. 76% use environmental impact data and carbon footprint to inform their planning and actions. From your collective efforts in reporting, we at Julie's Bicycle are able to produce a picture of where the sector is with its carbon emissions. This donut diagram, the one on the right, for example, vitally tells us where the biggest impact areas are and therefore informs us on where more of our support is needed to help the sector to decarbonise. Collective reporting works. So just a very quick overview on what is coming up in the new environmental programme 23-26. It's going to be packed with content and resources. There are 4 leadership strands: the Board Environmental Champions, Creative Climate Leadership, Lab, Transforming Energy and Leading Resilience. And additional support is provided to the portfolio and the sector as a whole through carbon tools and a wide range of resources. The tools, webinars, policy updates and briefings, case studies and peer sharing discussion. And all of these resources are freely available, or will be freely available when we get there, in the resource hub on our website, again found on the juliesbicycle.com website. So just for a moment, I'm going to speak directly to those of you that are reporting on 2022 to 2023 data. So as with previous years, there are 2 things that you need to be doing. You need to firstly upload an up-to-date environmental policy and action plan to the Creative Climate tools. And then secondly, you need to enter your environmental data into the tools covering the financial year, which is April 2022 to March 23. And if you need any clarification on those requirements, please refer to your ACE funding agreement in the first instance or speak with your relationship manager. Now, the deadline for this is Friday, the 30th of June, 2023. Now, this is an important one because as in previous years, we have granted extensions, but because of the overlap of the 2 cohorts this year, we cannot grant extensions this year. So please do make a note, Friday, the 30th of June is the deadline. So just to talk about the tools, the update of the tools briefly. So Julie's Bicycle received some funding from ACE to update the Creative Green tools. Much work has been taking place in the background. And for those of you familiar with the old tools, you will notice that the updated branding and of course the name has gone live. We are now officially the Creative Climate tools. There is some new functionality that has been made live already, such as home working, some updated travel functionality on the user face, a customs emissions tab. However, currently the tools work very much as they did during last year's reporting. Once this reporting period is over, there will be some further very exciting updates made to the tools, all of which will be communicated through our newsletter. So do make sure you're signed up so that you can stay updated. There will also be further demonstration opportunities later in the year when that new functionality is made available. So keep an eye out for that further information as well. So just a few tech points related to the tools from our digital lead. Please use updated browser software and where possible, use the latest version of Chrome. The tool does work on mobile and tablet, but if you've got a lot of data to input, we strongly suggest using a laptop or desktop. Make sure your operating system and antivirus software are all up to date, and do save your data regularly. There's no need to submit until you're ready, but do save it. Now, we do regular system backups. However, we cannot guarantee individual user data recovery. So please, once you've submitted your annual reports, download it so that you have your own records stored safely. Right, in terms of Julie's Bicycle support, we are here to help you with the tools, and specifically during the reporting period of May, we have a dedicated email help desk which is available at support@juliesbicycle.com. On Thursdays throughout May and June only, we also have a telephone line available. The number's on screen now. And that is available, as I said, Thursdays only, 9:30 till 5 p.m. We do recommend, though, in the first instance, using the support@juliesbicycle.com route. Yeah. So a little bit of new functionality. UserBack is a new function which allows users to send screenshots and screen recordings to report technical issues within the tools. You click the feedback tab on the bottom right of the screen to open the menu, as shown in that screenshot on the slide. You use the report a bug function to give us details with the options to send videos and annotated screenshots. I should stress that this is for technical use. Sorry, I should stress this is for technical issues rather than help with your data input. For data input issues, please use the support@juliesbicycle email address. So I have whizzed through these. They will all be, the slides will all be made available, and we're going to put the recording up onto the website, so you will be able to refer back. But just a quick recap of things to remember. The deadline for NPO reporting for 2022-2023 is Friday, the 30th of June. Your data for that year, it refers to the financial period, which is April 2022 to March 2023. And if you need any clarifications on those requirements, please refer to your ACE funding agreement or speak with your relationship manager. Upload your policy and action plan to the document page of the Creative Climate Tools, which Marina will show you shortly. And there will be no extensions granted. So the 30th of June is your deadline. So I'm now going to hand over to Marina, who is going to run through a demonstration of the tools. After that, we will have a 10-minute break, at which point we will then collate your questions and start addressing them. What I was going to say one at a time, but we'll probably group them together.
Thanks, Kaz. So hello, everyone. My name's Marina. My pronouns are she, her. I have straight brown hair. I'm currently wearing a sort of dark green jumper. Got this beige background with some blue lights behind me as well. So as Kaz mentioned, for this part of the session, I will be taking you through the demonstration of the Creative Climate Tools. So during this time, I'm going to go through how to create an account, key navigation points, creating different types of reports, and finally looking at your results. So for those of you who are familiar with the tools, you'll notice a few differences that Kaz has mentioned, and this should make your user experience better. This demonstration will be quite in-depth, so I just want to reiterate that this session is being recorded, so you will be able to go back and rewatch the recording if you miss anything. All right, so let's get started. You should be able to see a sign-up page. So for new users that have joined us today, the first thing you'll be looking to do is to set up your organization's account. So this form can be found at the Creative Climate Tools sign-up page, where you will need to enter some basic information about your organization. So this includes things like your organization name, the country and region that your organization operates in, the size of your organization, and the sector that your organization belongs to. You'll also be asked to select what kind of year you would like to report against. So you can either do this by calendar year, which runs from January to December, or using your own financial year, and you can select your start date and end date as shown below. You will also be asked to select which Arts Council England funding portfolio your organisation belongs to. So you're able to select multiple subcategories if your organisation belongs to more than one of the funding portfolios. A quick note to our existing users: when logging in for the first time following the update of the tools, you will be asked to update your organisation details page to provide this portfolio information. So please make sure that you do this in the first instance. And finally, on the form, there's just a couple of bits of contact information. Please note that any of the information that you have entered in this form, you will be able to make amendments to these details if needed once you've created your account. And I will be able to show you where you can do this shortly. So let's begin with some key navigation points. Once you've created your account, you'll be taken through to the data page. And this is the most important page on the platform where you'll be creating your reports and starting to enter your data. The data page can be found here on the left-hand navigation panel. Then if we move on to the results page, once this is loaded, this is where you can look at your data in tables, graphs, and then compare your results year to year and see the outputs of the reporting process. We also have a homepage, and this will give you an overall dashboard of the most recent information on your account. Do not worry, we will come back to these pages later on in the demo in a lot more detail. And then in the top right-hand corner, you can access your account details via the organization details and the user details pages. So these are the pages where you can amend that information that you gave in the account setup. Within the organization details, you also have the ability to add new users using the add new users page that I've just clicked on. So this is really useful for organizations where multiple members need to access the same Creative Climate Tools account. So instead of creating individual accounts, you can add multiple users to the organization by entering your colleagues' email addresses here, and then just pressing add. And this will basically trigger an email inviting your colleagues to join your organization account on the Creative Climate Tools. Alternatively, if you are having issues with adding your users, or the person who used to have access to the Creative Climate Tools has now left the organization, please just contact our help desk and we will help you gain access to your organization's account. So lastly, on that right-hand side drop-down, we've got a new resources page. So here you can find some really useful documents. I would recommend actually checking out some of the user guides for specific footprints, as they can really help you get started. Circling back to the data page, we're going to start creating some reports. So on the Creative Climate Tools, there are 6 different types of reports that you can choose from, and they either sit under the new building or new project buttons. Under buildings, you can either select an office or a venue and cultural building report. So a venue and cultural building might include a theatre, museum, gallery, cinema, really any kind of public space venue. And then an office refers to a more closed environment of an office building or a space that you run as your organisation. On the other side, we have projects. So here you can create different reports related to the activity of your organisation. We've got 4 different report options here. So we've got outdoor events, indoor events, tours, and productions. So users are encouraged to create as many or as few of these reports as is relevant to their organisation. We would typically recommend that an organisation chooses one building footprint report, so either an office or a venue, for their general day-to-day operations. And then we would recommend complementing this with project footprints, depending on your organization's structure and the field that it sits in. This is just a recommendation. We recognize that organizations are all very different, and another combination of reports might work better for your organization. So just do what works best for you. As an example, I'm going to run through how you would set up a venue footprint. So if we start by, you'd click the new building button and then select venue and cultural building. Then you enter the name of your building. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to call this venue C. And then you would just select your sector and add any details if you would like to. Once you've clicked save, this will take you through to the data entry part of the account. So as you can see, the reports are set out with various tabs running across the top of the page. And this covers the different impact areas relating to this venue. So we have energy use, water, waste, and then different types of travel. These tabs will vary depending on the type of report that you've selected, but as a whole, the layout of the reports will look really similar throughout. So the idea is that you just work through these tabs and enter the data that is relevant to your organization for the year that you're reporting on. So I will briefly show you the information required on each tab. So in terms of the first page, this is the general tab. And the most important fields on this page are the reporting year selected and the country that your organization operates in. These fields have an impact on the calculations, so please ensure that they are correct. We would also recommend that you keep this tick box checked, as this will ensure that the emissions from your footprint are actually included in your results when submitted. So a reason for unchecking this box might be that you're using the footprint for forecasting purposes or just for a test, and therefore you don't want them to appear in the results, for example. On this tab, you can also enter some basic information about your building, such as what type of building it is, the floor area, and the number of employees based there. Another important field on this tab is the total known attendance. So as you can see, this field has a bit of a reddish color to show that it is a mandatory field. And this is because it directly influences the calculations on another tab. In this case, it actually influences the audience travel tab. So you need to make sure that this field is filled in order for the emissions calculations to work. So let's just put in some data here. Under the venue and cultural building footprint, you can also enter information on the different performance spaces you may have. So for example, if your building is a theatre, you might want to enter information about different spaces within your building where you're running different performances, and you can record this different information here. So at this stage, it's actually worth noting that not every single field in this report needs to be completed. Some fields may not be relevant to your organization, and some fields you might just not have the data for it yet. When you start out, just focus on the key impacts and make sure that those mandatory fields are filled in. Okay, so that's it for the general page. Let's move on to the first page where you'll be entering data that will actually start generating your footprint. So this is the energy use tab. The main areas for energy data for most buildings will be things like the electricity use or the mains gas use. And the idea is that you're entering the consumption figures for the period that you're reporting on. So for a building footprint report, this will be over the entire year. So for example, you might ask yourself, how much electricity did our main venue use over the last 12 months? And these figures can usually be found in your basic utility bills or by taking a manual meter reading, And the units for these figures would typically be found in kilowatt hours. There are also a few different options for things here related to generators. So we also have diesel and biodiesel, particularly for events and some outside spaces. A useful tip is that some of these fields have a small red icon just above them. So if you hover over these, a black call out box will appear just like so with some help text. And this includes some useful information on the type of data that you're expected to enter and some useful tips on where you can go to collect it. So if we move down, we have a newly added section for home working. And this is where organizations can record information about their employees working from home. And it just consists of two simple fields, the total number of working hours for home office equipment and for home heating. So this is essentially asking for the number of employee hours spent working from home across the organization for the year, and then estimates the emissions based on these figures. Another new feature that has been added to the tools is the ability to enter a custom carbon figure. So your key stakeholders might be able to provide you with a specific carbon emissions figure related to your consumption or activity. And essentially, this field allows you to enter this specific figure directly into your report. These custom emission sections are actually available to use on almost all of the tabs of all of the report types, and you'll be able to see them dotted around as we go through the demonstration. And lastly, in most tabs, you will find a notes section. So these sections are actually really useful for keeping track of how you've approached the data entry and keeping this information consistent against reporting years. So we would definitely recommend that you use these where possible. In terms of footprint navigation, at the bottom of each page, there is an option to save and update your results and to move on to the next page. So we would recommend that you save your data as you go along, as the tools do not have an auto-save function, and this will prevent you from losing your data. But before we actually move on to the next tab, I just want to demonstrate what will happen once you save your data. So if we look at the top of the page, the footprint currently has 0 emissions. And then if we, sorry, has someone spoken? I think someone's unmuted themselves, no? Okay, sorry, I'll just carry on. And then if we actually add a bit of data, just like so, and go to the bottom of the page and save the data, the tool will update and start generating your footprint in the top right-hand corner of the page. So this is a useful way to check that things are saving as you're working through the report. So moving on to the next tab, this is the water tab, where you can enter consumption figures for your building over the last 12 months. Water and wastewater data is basic information that should be readily available on your utility bills or via meters if you have metering available in your building. And these figures are actually typically found in meters cubed. As mentioned previously, we also have the custom emissions and notes sections available again if users have extra data or information that they would like to add. So now on to waste. So this is split into the different waste streams. So whether waste is going to landfill, energy, which is incineration, whether it's going to recycling or composting. So there's a few different unit options that can be used to measure your waste. So one option is simply entering the tons of waste produced. So you're likely to receive this tonnage data from a waste contractor, for example. Alternatively, if you don't have this type of information available, we also have some estimates which can be selected from the dropdown. So we have things like monthly wheeled bin collections, we also have skips, or even just simply weekly bin bags. For example, if you don't have the exact figure in tons, but you know your bin size, so let's assume it's 240 litres, for example, and you know that it's collected 5 times a month, you would enter this information like so, and the tool will calculate this over a 12-month period. There are a few areas in the tools like this where estimates have been made just to make things a little easier for users that don't have some of this information readily available. So just use what works best for you. So now let's move on to the next tab, which is the audience travel tab. So this page is set out in a way that you would typically survey an audience for their travel information. The idea here is that you've got the list of different transport types on the side, and you would enter the percentage of your audience that are traveling by this certain method. So, for example, if you've done a survey for your events or your venue, you might know that 80% of your audience traveled by car and the rest traveled by train, for example. You'll also need to enter the average return distance that your audience members have traveled to get to and from your event. So let's just add in some data. And for car, as you can see, it also asks for carpooling information. So just entering the average occupancy of the car. Okay. So now let's save our results and see update. If we actually quickly circle back to the general tab, this is why I emphasized the fact that the total known audience field is important, as this figure actually directly impacted these calculations. If this had been left blank, the audience travel emissions would not have been calculated. So please just look out for those mandatory fields. Back to audience travel. So to collect this information, we would recommend conducting an audience travel survey. This is the most accurate way to collect this information. And this can be done at the point of sale or at the box office ticket collection. Or even you could send out a questionnaire to your members to find out how they would typically travel to your venue. For anyone who's not able to obtain this audience travel information, there is a default option here at the top. So if you select this box at the top, the tools can roughly estimate the size of your audience travel impacts based on some research that Julie's Bicycle conducted a few years ago. All you have to do is just ensure that that total known audience is filled out in the general tab. So moving to business travel. For those of you who have used the tools before, you can see that the layout of this tab has changed. However, the way in which you enter the data is largely the same. So business travel refers to any non-commuter work-related travel that's connected to your job. So if you have members of your team traveling for events, conferences, or training, this data can be recorded here. So this sort of travel information should be readily available on record or can usually be obtained from your travel partner. So let's start at the top. We've got flights. By clicking the Add Flight button, you will get a pop-up box with two options of how you can enter your data. So if you select Manual, you'll be asked to enter the distance traveled on the flight journey and what type of flight this was. Alternatively, if you don't have the mileage figures available, we have the automatic option, which allows you to select your departure journey. So let's go with, departure city. Let's go with London, and also select your arrival city. And the tools will basically calculate this distance for you. A useful tip to take note of is that little return journey box right there. Ticking this will automatically calculate the return journey and prevent you from having to double the amount of data in your report. You'll also be asked to record the number of people traveling in the different airline class types. So people traveling in either economy or first class, for example. This is actually quite important because it plays into the calculations, as there are slightly different emissions for the way in which you fly. Once you save your flight, it will appear in this flight table here, and the information is editable using the little pencil at the end of the row. If we move on to other travel, so you can select the mode of transport using the travel type dropdown. And depending on the travel type that you select, different options will appear for the vehicle type, for example, and the measured by fields. For collecting this travel information, our advice would be to have a look at the different travel options that we've actually got within the tools and what information is needed for each travel type that your organisation uses. However, as a general rule, you should collect what the mode of transport was for the journey, either the distance that was travelled in kilometres or miles, or the total fuel used in litres for the journey, and then the number of these journeys that were made. If I actually give an example, let's select car. And as you can see, I can select from these different vehicle types. So for diesel, we have the option to enter the distance travelled or the total fuel used for the journey, as I mentioned. As you can see, in this case, the number of people field has been hidden, as it is not relevant to this calculation and therefore doesn't need to be collected. However, if I had selected train, for example, we can see here that the number of people field is needed. So if we knew that a train journey distance from London to Manchester, for example, was 260 kilometres, and that 10 members of our organisation went on this trip, we would enter the data in like so. Another quick navigation point that you may have noticed going through this tab is that you're actually able to add and remove lines of data using the plus and minuses at the end of each row, just like so. I'd also like to note that for those of you who have used the business travel tab in its previous format, that any of the data that was already entered into the tools previously will not be affected by this update. Lastly, on this tab, we have newly added this accommodation section. So here you're able to calculate the emissions by entering the number of nights spent in the hotel accommodation. So for example, if I knew that 10 members of staff were staying at a hotel for 5 nights each, the number of nights that would be entered would just be 50. So moving over to fleet travel. So this is laid out in a very similar way to the business travel tab. The main distinction here is that fleet travel refers to any vehicles that are owned or operated by your organisation, such as cars, vans, and minibuses, for example. So again, you can choose from the mode of transport using the travel type and the vehicle type drop-downs. And for most of these vehicles, there will be the option to enter the distance of the journey or the amount of fuel used by your vehicle. The final page on all of your reports will be the Beyond Carbon tab. So this tab is essentially about going beyond the basic carbon numbers to capture a bit of that qualitative information around what you do as an organisation. Please note that the Beyond Carbon survey does not contribute to this overall carbon footprint figure. The survey is broken down into a few different areas. So for example, the first section is called Everyday Good Practice, which is split into different parts like what you do around energy, water, waste, and food, for example. So the idea is that this is meant to be in part a bit of inspiration, a kind of checklist of best practice where you can work through and record what you do as an organisation around sustainability. So if you fill this in every year, you'll be able to track your qualitative improvements, which may not have been directly reflected in the numbers above. So if we quickly move through the list, there's other headings such as governance and leadership. We've also got creative programs and engagement, and then benefits from environmental action. You can also record any other things that you're working on in these open text boxes if you want these on record as well. So finally, we have the submission page that you can see here. So when working through the reports, you can save your data and come back to them at a later stage. This is absolutely fine. We don't expect organizations to necessarily fill everything out in one go. However, once you're happy with your data that you've entered, there is the Submit Footprint button here. And pressing this button will send a notification to Julie's Bicycle to inform us that your data has been submitted. And this will also send all of your data from your report over to the results pages. So just to emphasize that last point that I made, if you want your data to go through to your results pages, you will need to submit your report. This doesn't mean that you can't amend your report once it's been submitted. You can always go back into a report at a later date if needed. If you choose not to submit your report, just please make sure that you click that Save and Continue Later button. Also, another thing to just take note of is this missing values section. So any fields that appear in red in this section mean that they are a mandatory data field that has not been filled out and therefore is affecting your emissions calculations. So by clicking on this field here, it will actually take you straight back to the place in the report where the empty field is. As you can see, actually in this, this field is actually in black, which means that we don't have any missing fields for this report, so everything is actually fine. So that's the end of this report. If we actually circle back to the data page where we created the report, underneath an edit and incomplete footprint section, we can find the report that we were working on. It's just here, there we go, venue C. And you can actually continue editing it just by clicking the little edit button at the end of the row. Any of the reports that sit within this section are reports which have not yet been submitted. Another area to point out is this section here. So the idea is that rather than creating a new report each year, what you would do is add a footprint year to an existing building or project that you've created. So to do this, you would just select the building. So let's actually select venue C, so that's what we've made. So we would just come back in 12 months, select venue C, and add the next reporting year, just like so. The easiest way to actually see all of the data available in your account, including the submitted and incomplete reports, is just by going to the footprints page here. So as described at the top, you can either view them by buildings, you could view them by projects, or by the year that you've got the footprints in. So as you can see here, if I just scroll down a little bit, we've got footprints and venues that are actually going back multiple years under some buildings. So like I said, the idea is that you just come back in 12 months time and then add a new year of data. So I wouldn't need to set up a new building from scratch. I could just go to the data page and add this new year using that process that I've just shown you. Alternatively, we've also added a new function where users are now able to copy the data from a previous report. So all you have to do is select the footprint that you would like to copy, click copy, enter an entry name, select the year, and click the copy button. All right, so this is a good place to remind everyone that some organizations may have multiple reports, just like this test organization, and they might have loads of buildings, loads of projects, but others just might have one. And the idea is really just to use as many or as little as you want for your organization, just doing what works best for you, essentially. So taking a step back from all of these reports, the report that I just went through is this venue and cultural building footprint. But in terms of the other footprint reports that we've got available, we also have office, indoor event, and outdoor event, which are largely similar to the footprint that I've just shown you in terms of the tabs and the information required. So for time's sake and to avoid repetition, I won't be going through these footprint reports in this demonstration. However, I will show you the other two reports that are slightly different, and those are the tour and the production project reports. So starting with tour, so this footprint can be used to capture the emissions from a tour, whether it's a theatre tour, music tour, touring production of any nature. And primarily this footprint report looks at the show power and the travel involved from moving as part of a tour. So again, we've got that similar layout with the tabs running across the top of the page. However, the tabs themselves are slightly different, as you can see. So starting with the general tab, this just asks for basic information about the tour, like what year the tour was running, the date ranges covered, the name of the tour, and the territory in which the tour takes place. The next tab that we have is performances. So this is where you can record information about the number of indoor and outdoor performances which took place as part of the tour, and the number of tickets that were sold or issued during the tour. Now moving on to accommodation. For those of you who have used the tools before, you'll see that this tab has been slightly refined. So the accommodation section works in the exact same way as the one that I showed in the business travel tab earlier on in this demonstration. All you have to do is enter the number of nights spent in hotel accommodation to determine your emissions. This information should be available via your travel agent or internally through the accommodation managers or production team. Please also note that currently this tab only allows for users to enter hotel accommodation data. However, we would recommend that full properties rented are assumed to have a similar carbon footprint per night, per room as hotels, essentially. Moving to personnel travel. So this tab is where you would record information regarding an individual's regarding the individuals traveling as part of the tour. So this information should be available via your travel agent or internally through your fleet operator or production team. So similarly to the other travel tabs, the way you have the ability to enter the data in terms of the distance traveled, the total fuel used for the journeys, basically. And all of the modes of transport are just listed out just like so. And this tab also includes the ability to record chartered flights that we don't have in the other tabs. So lastly, in the tour footprint reports, we have the production tab. This includes the ability to record data around show power and the freighting of your materials. So at the top, we have a field for the estimated show power for the production. And this information should be available from your production supplier or the venue team. Just below, this section is where you can enter information about the larger vehicles being used by your organization to transport sets and larger materials. This tab is laid out again in a very similar way to the previous tab. However, there are two set bits of information that are needed. So we need the distance traveled per trip, and we need the weight transported on the journey. There's also the option to distinguish between the vehicle types chosen for the different trucks, for the different flights and ferries, if you have this information. And in general, the freighting information should be available via your fleet operator or your production team. So that's it for the tour report. If I quickly show you the production report here. So the production footprint mainly looks at the impacts of materials, lighting, sound, and effects of productions. So this starts again with a general tab where you can record information about the scale, cost, and the length of the production. Moving to the set design and management tab, this focuses on two main set materials. We've got steel and timber. So this information should be obtained from your production team. At the top, you can enter the data regarding different timber types, their source, size, and the amount that was used for the production. An important part is also recording the information regarding the end-of-life treatment of these materials. So were they sent to landfill, incinerated, were they recycled or maybe reused? And basically, you can enter the percentage for each destination just here. And then if we just go a bit further down, similar information can be entered for steel just here. The other main tab on this report is the lighting, sound, and effects tab. So the tab starts with the ability to record data relating to your lighting rig use during your rehearsals and your shows. Further down, there is also the option of entering information regarding the energy consumption of your sound system, your projection equipment, and the automation. Essentially, this will help to give you an idea of the impact of an individual production that you're working on. So that's it for this report also. With impacts in mind, let's move on to finally looking at the results pages. So once you've gone through the process of submitting your data, the tool will then generate all your information in the results section. So this is where you can really interrogate the data that you've provided. And essentially in the results section, we've got 4 main sub-pages that you can have a look at. So we've got the summary, compare, detail, and benchmarks pages. On the first page, you can see we've got a summary of all of the data in your account for specific years. So currently we're looking at 22-23. There is the pie chart here, which has the overall split of your emissions into the different impact areas for the year selected. And the graphs can also be manipulated to show more granular information about a section. So let's just take energy, for example, and here you can see a more detailed breakdown of the areas. This can also be done for all the different segments that we've got. And then if you scroll down, you can see that this information is broken down in table form. The data on this page can also be viewed with this little subheading here by view by footprint. And in this view, you're able to see all of your footprints submitted for your account in the year 2022, side by side. On these pages, you also have the opportunity to download the pie charts, graphs, and tables of data. So for pie charts and graphs, if you just go to the 3 lines in the right-hand corner of the image, this will offer you options of how you would like to download the image. Alternatively, you can also download the numerical data or the overall graphics using the buttons at the side just here. So if we move on to the next page, which is the compare tab, once this page is loaded, you'll be able to see that this allows you to compare your results from year to year. So on the right-hand side, you can choose to compare all of your reports, or you can have a look at an individual building or project. So let's just have a look at Theatre A. So if this is your first year of reporting, obviously you'll only be able to see 1 year of data. But the more you use the tool, the more this section becomes useful. When looking at individual reports, you can also show your results by either the total values or by different metrics that we've got available. So for example, we're currently looking at the emissions figures for this theatre. So we could also compare the emissions or the carbon footprint per floor area, for example, or per visitor, or per performance, just to see how the emissions are affected by these metrics year on year. Another useful tip is that you can toggle the impact areas on the graphs on and off just by clicking on them. So if you're interested in highlighting specific areas, you can do this by just toggling these on and off, just like so. So next we have the detailed page, which summarizes the data entered for an individual footprint report. So you can use the drop downs at the side, just here, to toggle by report and by year, just to have a look at the different ones. This page is split again into those key impact areas and is also useful for downloading the CSV files containing individual reporting data using the buttons at the side here. Finally, we've got the benchmarks page. So on the Creative Climate Tools, we have several benchmarks in place, which will allow you to compare the impact of your organization against a building or an event of a similar size. So this example is actually looking at an office where the benchmark data is based on floor area. At the bottom of the graph, as you can see, we've got the comparison for electricity, gas, and water use. On the right-hand side in yellow, this is the data that we've entered, and on the left in orange, this is the benchmark figure. Looking at these results, we can see that we're slightly over on gas, we're slightly under for electricity, and we seem to be absolutely miles over for water. And the large difference in this water figure could actually be indicating a mistake when entering the footprint data, or also could help identify that there's a problem with the building's consumption. So on this page, we actually have a few different benchmarks available. So we also have ones for outdoor events, performing arts venues, museums, and galleries. And these can be accessed toggling the different reports on the sidebar here. So if we go back to the left-hand navigation panel, now let's just have a quick look at the documents page. This page isn't that relevant, but I'll just go through it quickly. On this page, users have the ability to upload their environmental policies and action plans. So if you're a national portfolio organisation and that you have in your funding agreement with the Arts Council that includes an environmental policy and an environmental action plan, this is the section that you can use to submit these documents. But if you don't have this requirement, and just other organisations in general are able to upload the documents if they wish to do so, but this is completely up to their discretion. Before I circle back to the homepage, I just want to say that these pages that you can see at the bottom here are just for admin purposes only. So do not worry if you can't see them on your screen if you've tried to log in. These are just for Julie's Bicycle purposes, so I won't be going through those. But the last page we'll have a look at today is the homepage. So this shows you essentially your dashboard, and this is an overall summary of the data on your account. So we have that pie chart image that we were looking at on the results pages that you just saw. We also have that total carbon footprint for your most recent year of data. So as you can see, we're currently looking at 2022 to 2023 on this account. On the right-hand side, you can also see the various reports which contribute to this footprint. And then at the bottom, you can see some trends of some key impact areas which are compared to your previous year of data. So that is it. You'll be glad to know that we have reached the end of the demo. And as we've already mentioned, for more information regarding like the Creative Climate Tools, we would really recommend that you check out the guidance videos. There's also another demonstration video on the resources pages, or you can also access them via the Julie's Bicycle website. So I'll now hand back over to Kaz for the last bit.
Great, thank you very much, Marina. We've had lots and lots of questions and we are getting through them. We've tried to answer some of them in the chat, so hopefully, yeah, we have got to a few of them, but we will answer more of them after our break. So we're going to break for, what time is it? 1:03. So let's break for 12 minutes. Let's come back at 1:15, and at which point we will go through all of the questions, both in the Q&A on Zoom and on Slido. If you can use Slido, it's really, really helpful because it means we've got your email address, and then it means that we can come back to you later if we don't get to you this afternoon, but we will endeavour to get to as many of you as possible. So we will see you all in now 11 minutes at 1:15. Hello, welcome back everybody. Thank you ever so much for all the questions. We've had lots of them. We have tried to get to quite a few of them. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go through some of the questions. There are so many, but as I've said before, we will get back to any questions that we can't address here, whether we run out of time or some of the questions we just need to go and refer to other JB people. So I will start with, we have got a question. Is there a way of calculating the climate impact of online events and live streaming?
So currently within the tools, we don't have the ability to start calculating your digital footprint. So you won't be able to do that with our tools. There are a couple of calculators that are coming up out there that might be able to help you with that, but just with the digital footprinting, it's extremely difficult because of the different servers and everything around the world. It would be extremely hard for us to be able to calculate this at this point. There basically isn't enough data available for us to accurately be able to give you a carbon footprint with regards to this. So unfortunately, you won't be able to, but I guess as things become more easily available to us and the information out there evolves, we'll be able to start thinking about adding this, because we do understand that this is something important, but it's not something we can provide at this point.
Thanks, Marina. I'm going to go to one of the questions in the chat because it's come up a couple of times now. So, hi, can we as an organisation that is not an NPO but project funded by ACE use the tools to calculate our carbon footprint on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, short answer is yes, you can. Anyone can use the tools at their own liberty, basically. If it, you know, it can still give you a decent calculation of your carbon footprint. So yeah, it's not specifically for NPOs or even specifically for ACE funded people. So yeah, feel free.
Does JB provide templates for an environmental policy and action plan to help out smaller organisations and new NPOs? And again, short answer is there is a template. There is guidance on our website. So if you go to the resources hub, you can have a look and look at our advice there. Right. Home working. So all of our team work from home and then travel to locations as needed. Do we just add home working data in the building section?
So yes, so what you can do, what I would suggest doing is kind of, if you have that basic building footprint that you are using for your day-to-day operations and things like that, add your home working data in there in the energy use tab. And then traveling to your events or locations, you can put that information in your business travel tab within that footprint.
So we've had a few questions on van. One question here, if our team travels during a tour using our own van, do we add this to personnel travel as a bus or not include the information?
So we're actually looking at including van within, so we're actually going through a bit of a development project on the tools, and we're looking at including van in the future. So my suggestion would probably be to actually add it in the notes section at the bottom of your personnel travel or whichever travel section that you're hoping to add into, just so that you've got that information recorded there in the future, just when we decide to add it. And then if you were actually interested in still kind of getting an idea of the emissions around that, you could also contact the help desk and we might be able to help you with that. So that's the short answer, but I guess watch this space, it will be coming soon.
Can we amend last year's report to change the data?
Yes, you can. You can either go back into that anytime you want and edit it, or you can also make a copy of it using there's a little button that says copy next to the footprint, and you can copy it and then essentially use it as a template for another year, so you can input the year that you want to change it to, be it 2023 or 2024, and then you'll have all of that data in there, and then you can use that as a copy.
Thanks, Lucas. We've had a couple of questions that have been answered in the chat, but I'm just going to refresh the answers. So does green energy include electricity from our main electricity supplier or on-site generated electricity?
Sorry. Sorry. With the green tariffs, it's essentially if you are using a green tariff, for example, Bulb or Octopus or something like that, we would encourage you to still input your electricity usage as if it was just normal national grid, because essentially it is like basically you don't know where your actual electricity is coming from when it's been generated from the grid. So the renewable energy tab is for anything that has been produced off the grid. So for example, if you have solar panels on site or anything like that, I'm not sure if that completely answers the question, but yeah.
We've had a few of these questions about commuter. So one of them is, where would you like us to input staff commuting data if not in business travel?
We don't currently have a field for commuter data, and it's not something that's a requirement from ACE's perspective, but it is kind of something we're looking at including in the future, because we're aware that it is obviously quite a large chunk of some people's emissions. So yeah, hopefully this will be something that is included in the development stage coming up.
I think we would also say that if you were looking to actually include the emissions within your footprint, if you really wanted to, you can include them in the business travel tab. I know in the presentation I said this is non-commuter work related travel, but our advice would be to, in the journey description, just make sure that you're very clear that it's a staff commuter journey that you're entering. If you did want to have an idea of what sort of emissions you're looking at, that's a way that you could do it also. But as Lucas said, we are looking at adding this in the future.
Thanks, Marina. Right, so we've had one question. How would you define an office space that is housed in a building that also hires rehearsal space to generate income for the organisation?
That's a bit of a difficult one, but I would probably still say that if it's your office space within your venue, essentially, I would put this down as a venue and cultural building, that I would use that footprint. It's up to you. You could separate both of them, but I think for ease, it would probably be best to keep it within the venue and cultural building footprint. The venue and cultural building footprint essentially has all of the tabs that you would find in the office footprint. So putting this all in the same space is great. You can also separate it out, but I think this would get quite difficult, especially for things like your energy use and gas and things like that. Separating these two places out might be quite difficult if you don't have sub-metering and things like that. So the easiest way would just be keeping it all tucked within the venue and cultural building footprint. I don't know if anyone else from my team has another opinion on that, or if I've given the right,
I was actually going to go on because I think Sam from Samuel School from Arts Admin, and he's actually said, to clarify my previous question, we sublet the other office studio spaces in our building to generate income. How would that be filed? Still building or office? So I think you're right, because obviously, sorry, go on, Marina.
Yeah, no, that yes, that is a bit difficult. I guess it depends whether you use, I understand if you sublet as well. So I would say if you also use the studio kind of office space, I would put it still as a venue and cultural building. If you solely use it as an office, I would go with the office footprint, and because essentially the venue and cultural building goes to the subletters. That's how I would see it.
We've had a similar question as well, Marina. We share an office with another company. How do we accurately log our footprint? And I know this comes up quite a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, this, yeah, it's kind of similar to what we've been talking about, I guess. So there's a couple of ways that you can actually do this. What we would recommend is finding out the floor area that your office takes the space of out of the whole office. So if it's like 100 meters squared of, don't know how much the overall office space would be, and getting your electricity or gas bill, water bill from your landlord, and then taking the proportion using the office floor space. That's one of the easiest ways to do it. If you don't have the floor space, the other way that you could do it is also by the number of employees that you've got. This is maybe a bit less accurate, but so you would just find out the amount of employees that work in the entire building, and then have take the proportion of that energy, which is the percentage of people that work in your building, if that makes sense. Don't know if I'm explaining the maths that well, but yeah, it's trying to take a proportion related to how much you've got. I think that's the best way to do it. Obviously, this will still be an estimate, but it's the best way that you can estimate it.
So we do not receive an itemised bill from our landlord. Is there a way we can use units used to report on rather than kilowatt hours, as we don't have this information?
We'd have to know what kind of units we're talking about, I suppose, because there's ways to convert other units to kilowatts, I suppose, but yeah, it depends really. I'm not really sure if Marina or Kaz have anything to add, but yeah.
I think that's the same, Lucas, exactly what you've said. I think if we have the ability to email after, just to find out what units you do have access to. We don't have a way to convert pounds into a conversion factor for the emissions for electricity, for example. So unfortunately that wouldn't be able to be done, but like Lucas said, there's other conversion factors. So please let us know and we might be able to help.
Our MPOs are required to submit specific data, i.e. the energy waste and audience travel, etc., or just the action policy plan? Sorry, I've read that wrong. Are MPOs required to submit specific data, i.e. energy waste, audience travel, or just the action policy plan, other than to inform practices? So it depends. If you are from the old cohort of 2018 to 2022, then you will have requirements within your funding agreement as to what you need to report. So it would be the energy, so there would be specific environmental data and your action and policy plan. If you're from the new cohort, then those requirements will be different, and you need to have a look to see what you need to be reporting on, what you should be reporting on. As an SSO for 22-23, should we be submitting our full organisational data or just data for the projects that were funded by ACE?
I think this is essentially the same answer, really. Like, just depends on what your agreements are with ACE. So it might, if you're not sure, then maybe it would be worth getting in contact with your relationship manager, because yeah, it's it might vary between different people, and it might only be required to report on specific projects, but yeah.
Does production cover artwork creation?
Well, yes, it does. It essentially in the tools, this would be the main place that you would come to if you wanted to do artwork creation. At the moment, we only offer the ability to add materials for timber and steel, but we are looking to expand this. So at this point, yes, the most relevant would be production. I think that's, unless my team have something else. No.
No, I think that's it. We've had a couple of these sorts of questions as well. So how much detail should we give for audience attendance events, for audience attendance for events happening outside of the UK? And I think the general answer here is as much as you possibly can. It's whatever data is available to you is what you need to submit. So just, yeah, as much as you possibly can. Marina, Lucas, is that? Yeah, fine with you. I can only add admin users to my organisation at the moment. Will I be able to add managers or non-admins in future, or is there a setting I need to change?
No, you don't need to change the settings. That's right. The only type of person I think that you can have is an admin. They'll have the same access as you. So yes, I do understand that in a way sometimes it would be easier to just have someone that would be able to view access. I think we used to have that available, but I'm not sure if anyone from my team can confirm that. But either way, they'll have the same amount of access as you, so they'll be able to see everything that you can, the results, all of that sort of stuff. So there's no problem with being an admin for sure.
Thanks, Marina. Just wondering if there's a type of project that is for making an artwork. The tool looks great, but I'm not sure how you could include this or calculate the cost.
I suppose going back to what Marina said, that you could use the production tool for creating an artwork, I suppose, but we don't have any means to calculate the cost specifically. I think that might be something that's in development potentially, or like return on investment, maybe. Marina, is that right?
I think, yes, it's something that we're looking at developing. So at this point, I think what we've got available would be a very, very broad estimate that you'd be able to do. So I understand that the tools at the moment, they're very much like building based, and you can do quite a lot of that. We're looking at developing the project tools a lot, and you'll be able to do a lot more with materials and things like that in the future. So I can see how when you're specifically looking at an artwork, things would get very bespoke. And right now, what we've got is a very broad material range, let's say, yeah.
Thanks, Marina. Yeah, just to add to that, sign up for our newsletter, because the future updates that are coming will all be detailed in that newsletter. So it's a good thing for you to keep your eye on. In the tour footprint production section, I missed how to get into the detailed lights, sound, etc. power breakdown page. Can you remind me how to do this, please?
So I might have been a bit confusing when I was doing my demonstration, but it was just with that one, it's actually tour and production are completely separate footprints. So tour doesn't have the materials and lighting section. That's in the production footprint, but tour has a production tab. So that's where you might have had the confusion a bit. If you were both wanting a tour, if you're wanting to get the emissions from tour and production, what my suggestion would be is creating a tour footprint for the travel associated with your tour and the general show power, and then having your production footprint to work out the specific emissions for that individual production as well.
Thanks, Marina. Our venue rents out our car park to another organisation to be used as a work bus pickup point. Do we need to include this car travel if it's unrelated to our venue?
My initial reaction would be no, because it's not your, I understand that you're renting this out, but this isn't within your control. So it's not, I would wonder how you would even get that information, maybe from that company. Essentially, that's their emissions to report on themselves. Yeah, it's not something that you can control, have influence over. So I would say no if it's just the car park. And the only thing that I would maybe say is potentially if you have electricity associated with the car park. But apart from that, the travel, I don't think so.
The next one, what are the tools that out there that you mentioned that would help calculating the digital footprint? Now, I know of the network condition. Lucas, if you've got any others, could one of you pop it into the chat as well, please?
Yeah, that was the one I linked as well. I'll put it in the chat.
I think the one I was thinking was fast familiar, but I'll have to check that, and I'll put it in the chat if I can find. Yeah.
Lovely. So we'll when we actually respond after this, we'll put all of these links in, make them available to you. Will the Creative Green certification be brought back? So not in that form. We won't be going back to the Creative Green certification, but there is talk of, or there's discussions on kite marks. So that's another, sign up to the newsletter, watch this space, because there is a development there. Quite a specific one here. Okay, we're a small NPO commissioning 5 exhibitions per year. I'm mindful of our capacity. Would you recommend creating a production for each?
I mean, I think for simplicity's sake, for you, and for looking back at the data, yes, that's what I would say. It's just important to remember you don't need to fill out every single tab and every single field for everything. So you could, it really is up to you and how you would like to use the data in the future, I'd say, because you can just add everything up and add them into the fields. If you find that easier, why not? Like that's what you can do. I would say just to make it easier, I would personally have them separated out. But yes, I think it's a question more for your organization. At the end of the day, the emissions should calculate exactly the same regardless of what you do.
Thanks, Marina. Okay, as a touring company, how do we know what venue data is required?
It's quite limited venue data actually required. You don't need things like floor space and things like that. Maybe the capacity of the venue, or like the rough sort of attendance, so that you can categorize it in terms of the size of the actual event, because within the touring bit there is sort of fields for different sizes of events. You could also ask them for a sort of estimate of the show power and the amount of energy that's being used in a show, but again, you don't need to be too granular with this because there's only one field for it. Yeah.
How do we calculate the distance of our audience's travel? It would be a lot of work to do this from the postcode.
I think just an estimate is okay. I mean, you can, yeah, I don't know the best way to do this. I mean, you can sort of figure out the nearest sort of you can do a survey for the audience and ask them how far they've traveled. That would be something you could do either during the event, which might be quite time consuming, but after the event is normally how people do it through the sort of ticketing mailing list. So that's obviously a nominal survey, but yeah, I don't know if there's much to add, but you can ask people how far they've traveled essentially to come.
I think, Kaz, you go ahead. I think with audience travel, it's easy to go down the rabbit hole of like, this needs to be perfect, but at the end of the day, it will be an estimate. You will not be able to get the travel information from every single person that attends your event. So kind of like Lucas said, if you instead have maybe like a big city that they're going from the start of the postcode, even if that's easier, things like that, just because, yeah, we won't get 100% accurate data for audience travel. It's just good to get a broad understanding of how your audience is traveling and then look at how you can influence it and things like that.
Thanks. We've only got a couple of questions left, actually. So we produce events in partnership with other organisations, e.g. the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham last year. Can we use these outdoor events as part of our footprint?
Yes, you can. If they themselves are an NPO, then you need to sort of check with them if they're also reporting on it, because then there's the risk of potentially double counting. But yeah, you can still use their data.
If we have a period of rehearsals that take place in different venues week to week, what sort of report would that be? Should we enter the whole rehearsal period in one report, or would we need to section it into a new rehearsal report for each different location?
I wouldn't. I don't know, with rehearsal information and things like that, if you were thinking about, I guess, the lighting is the one that we were kind of like looking at with rehearsal. I would say if you're using the same amount of show power and things like that, I don't think it matters. Separating out wouldn't make a difference. I think I would bunch this together. There's no need for you to make more for different rehearsal spaces at the end of the day, I don't think. I don't know if my colleagues have anything else to say to that, but in my head, I think just keeping it simple for that one. I know that's slightly different from what I've said about the exhibition space, because if they're 5 different exhibitions, I think it makes sense to keep them separate. If you're rehearsing for the same production, just keep it all in the same production footprint. That would be my advice for that one.
Yeah, sort of similar vein question. So last clarification, working on an artist support partnership basis where we produce freelance projects, we have about 20 things going on per financial year across categories: tours, indoor, outdoor productions, etc. Do we report on these projects individually? Or is it better or more efficient for us to bunch them together, i.e. total number of public travel hours purchased for all tours?
Yeah, this might, I don't know, maybe this is one that we can come back to after. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, Samuel, I think we need to come back to this, and maybe we can have a chat offline and really understand and help you to work out which tools are going to be the most relevant for you. Okay, that no worries. Well, we've got one more. Are JB still completing the energy scorecard? Now, I don't know that. Marina, Lucas, I'm not sure. I think that might be before our time, so I can come back to you on the energy scorecard as well. Okay. Wow, it's 1:45. Wonderful. So we've gone through all the questions that are on there. I'm very, very aware that there are probably going to be lots more questions that come up, especially for those new MPOs that are yet to start completing their data. Obviously, the reporting period, as we said, is open for May and June, so we have the help desk available then. But even outside of that period, we still have help available. So don't feel like you have to do this on your own. We are here to help you learn how to complete this data. Thank you very much, Marina. Thank you very much, Lucas. Thanks, Luby, in the background. Yes. Hope that was helpful to everybody, and we will either see you in the next session. I should add actually that this will be a repeat of today's session, so there is no need for you to attend June session. But obviously, if you've got some questions and wanted to come along to ask those questions, then please do. Otherwise, good luck with reporting. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.